Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this event. I'll take you through the presentation. This is part of my course on data visualization and communication. So let's start talking about this. Why are we here today? We're here today because I decided like a year ago to engage in to enroll in a DBA at Hult International Business School. And it's a great place. It's a place for minds, brains, and trust me, the way they've been training my brain, if I do that on the gym, I'd be having a six-pack today already. So I'm doing my DBA, and my DBA is titled Determinants of Organizational Effectiveness, and the main focus of my DBA is the human factor. Now, because of limitations, I have only 8 minutes to take you through this preliminary set of data that I've gathered. It's a very complicated topic, but I'll just keep it very, very simple and very brief. Basically, I believe that no matter where you work, I mean, on this table we have IT, we have development, we have project management, we have telecom, we have oil and gas, but we're all in the people business where we're simply, we cannot isolate anything we do on a daily basis from our ability to motivate and use and manage people. So basically, that's the focus of the DBA. I have used a partial data set. It wasn't unfortunately possible for me to get my full data set, and I got my data from Hawre Telecom, and I'm looking forward to working with other telecom companies to complete the data set. At the end of the presentation, there's a very important a form that's the evaluation form. That's where I know what I've done wrong, and that's where I can apply my corrective measures. So I appreciate it if you can just fill it in towards the end of the session. So, just a little bit of the research conceptual framework. I am assuming here, and I'm postulating here, that I have a set of independent variables here: role clarity, career development, leadership style, and organizational culture, and those affect organizational effectiveness as a dependent variable. And I have two mediators here in psychological safety and employee engagement. And it's way too complicated for me to explain in full. So I'll just keep it there. But that's basically what the research is about. Now, out of this research that we've done, I have 63 applicable data sets that I can use for the purpose of this practicum. Obviously, it's male dominant, and we need to do something about that. Hawre Telecom, and luckily it's a very young population, so that's very good. These are the demographics at the beginning. Time on the job, 5 to 10 years. We have about 38% of the respondents have been on the job for between 5 to 10 years, and most of the workforce or the respondents have a college degree and of course a master's and PhDs. And I have taken some of the independent variables, and we've sketched them versus the organizational effectiveness. And as you can see, this scatter line here is very annoying. It is very unless we're talking to people who actually study data science, this could be misleading. What I've used here is called the trend line. The trend line is an average between the two preceding data points, and it's an ongoing average line. That kind of tells you how that variable behaves, more or less. As you can see, the lines go together. The red from this point onwards will always be organizational effectiveness, and the dark gray would be the variable in consideration. For this slide is the role clarity. So you see that, role clarity is basically how people understand what's expected of them. When you hire someone, that person needs to know what's expected of him or her. Basically, I'm trying to avoid academic terminology here. And then we have leadership style versus organizational effectiveness, as just like role clarity, and based on the data set that we've gathered, they are also going together more or less. And there's a slight slope. I hope that will be rectified when we have a full data set. That is, 400, 500 data points. Leadership style does affect organizational effectiveness, as you can see. Likewise, we have employee engagement. Employee engagement in our model plays the role of a mediator, but it's also taken as an independent variable here, and how it sketches on a trend line basis versus organizational effectiveness. And we have psychological safety, another mediator variable with organizational effectiveness. But we can see how the trend lines go together. And same thing for career development. Career development is, I'm sorry, I should have explained psychological safety. Psychological safety is how employees are safe. What is their perception of safety while they work? Are they listened to? Are they afraid to share their opinions? Are they discriminated against? How are they psychologically safe from their own perception? And career development is self-explanatory, but basically it is how much of a growth is granted to the employees. Where do they see themselves growing into if they spend time and effort in the organization? And that's it in a nutshell. We can derive some recommendations from this preliminary data, and that's basically when we hire people, we should have them clear about our expectations of them. We should use the right leadership style to create a conducive and productive culture in the organization to enable people to perform better, where it all pours down into the final organizational performance and effectiveness. For me, that's what I gather from this partial data set. Again, we will be having this meeting later on when the data set is much more bigger than this, and it gives us much more clarity on the statistical relationship between and among all the different variables. Now we have 8 minutes for question and answer. We'll try to keep it to 8 minutes, but it's not carved in stone. So I'm here to take the questions, and apologies for being abrupt, because I just try to be on time. So I'm happy to take your questions, if any.
Let's go over the slides where it's listening. What is the difference between the mediator or the different variables?
Okay. Let me. All right.
Mostly
Great. Yes. All right. So on the left side here, we have independent variables.
Yeah.
If we try to simulate that as an input-output system, those are input, and organizational effectiveness is the output, is dependent variable. This depends on this one. Those two are variables, but they are also mediators. Mediators are state of mind. Like role clarity is something you give to the employee. It is something you have or you don't have in the organization. It's something that you have, but you can enhance on whatever it is. Availing a career development opportunity is again a policy that you have in the organization that you're running. And the same thing is valid for the leadership style and organizational culture. But these two are actually psychological states of mind. If I feel safe or if I don't feel safe in the organization, if I am engaged in my work, in my role, or if I'm not engaged in my role, they mediate how much of the independent variables have influence on the final organizational effectiveness. For example, we're not saying that if people are not psychologically safe, there's no organizational effectiveness. But we're saying that when people are psychologically safe, when they feel safe, when their perception of safety, and when they are engaged, a small input from the role clarity and the other independent variables will make a much bigger difference on the organizational effectiveness.
But
did I answer the question?
Are these roles, like a black and white? There's no flexibility. You can't extend it. This is your role. This is your job description. This is what you should do, and that's it.
The question we're trying to answer here, and of course, there's nothing black and white in the social science, but I understand the question. Like, can you really tie a person down to a certain scope and disallow them to do anything else? The other question is, does this person know what's expected of him or her? That's the other equally important parameter or variable that needs to be taken into consideration when you want people to perform, because you want them to know what is exactly expected of them. Now later on, when everyone knows what is expected of them, then they can collaborate, and then they can cooperate, and that's then you're talking about team dynamics. But in the first stage, each person or department should know what is expected of them, more or less. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, sir.
Thank you. First of all, many thanks for your fruitful presentation. I think the topic is something new and it's vital. Actually, I have two questions. You talked about the leadership style. So how many leadership style are there, like in your, let's say, data set or in your work you are trying to use? Also, the second question is, which visualizations tool has been used for this data analysis? Thank you.
Great. Thank you for the question. There are so many leadership styles. I can tell you about a few that I can remember right now. There is, for example, transformational leadership that mostly has to do with change management. There is coaching leadership that's mostly about how to teach people how to do things better. There's transactional leadership style that's about do me a favor, I'll do you a favor later on. There is the laissez-faire leadership style. That's a kind of leader that leaves everything. That they believe in the idea of leaving things alone, and they will somehow resolve each other. So so many kinds of leadership styles that I'm not sure that I know them all right now or recall them all. And the second question, I use the scatter line. Let me go back to the slides. Any one of them? I use the scatter line for mapping one variable, both variables on the same area. But then chose because if you only look at the background, zigzag lines, that doesn't really tell you much. But then there is this possibility for you to choose something that's called a trend line, and a trend line is taking the average of the two preceding data sets and tries to rectify that into showing you how the data actually behaves if it were a line, more or less. So that's basically the technique that I've used here, just to make it more visually communicatable to the audience.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you for the presentation. I have one question. You may know, and there are a lot of frameworks that is being used from forward in management, and organizational structuring and leadership. For example, in my field, like IT and telecommunication, there are a lot of international standard frameworks like ITIL coding. Microsoft has its own framework. DevOps, Scrum, Agile, so many. And those are based on international standards and best practices. My question, does your framework is referring to any of these organizational standards frameworks, or it's conceptual one based on, I mean, what's the background of it?
Thank you. There's actually no background. I looked at the variables, and it's a very valid question. One could ask that question in another way. Why these four? And why this one? And why these two? Honestly, that has to do with a little bit of my personal work experience here. In the Iraqi context and mostly in our Kurdish context, I personally believe that there hasn't been enough attention or emphasis on the human factor. The human factor is to me, you have, as a manager or as a leader of your business, you have a lot of resources to manage. Time and funds and banks and relations and contracts and opportunities, technology. You can do all of those. And those make a difference. But people make the difference. That's a personal belief. And based on that, I have chosen those. But I have theory that can prove that those constructs, academically, they just call it a construct. I just came to know that just last year, by the way. Otherwise I would have thought it was construction or something. But each one of those is called a construct. Why these four constructs and those four? Why these four independent variables or as constructs, and these three? Because from my 25 years of experience, I think those matter the most to us. The way I try to put it forward, or let's call it if it's a framework at all, if you choose the right leadership style and tell people what's really expected of them, like the spirit of what's expected of them, and give them opportunity to grow so that they become actual partners, not employees in the organization. And in the end, you have an organizational culture that is so conducive and so productive. You incubate, a performance team that will increase your organizational effectiveness beyond any measure, because they are safe, because they feel safe, and because they are engaged at all times. That's what I more or less postulate. Now, do I use any certain industry framework? Not really. In social science, this should be generic. It could vary from industry to industry. It could vary from IT to oil and gas, for example. But more or less, it should be all converging towards the same thing, because humans are humans, no matter where they work. Did I answer your question, sir? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Any more questions? Thank you very much for your time. It was really a pleasure. I know everyone on this table is super busy, and I just took you away from your families. Please apologize to them on my behalf. I really appreciate your presence today, and looking forward to sharing more in-depth data when more analysis becomes available, when we have more data from other players. So thanks again, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.